Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. A very warm welcome, first of all, to those of you joining in person tonight, and then also to those of you who are joining us on Zoom. We're live streaming right now. My name's Sam Thorne. I'm Director General here, and it's a great pleasure to be introducing this evening's event. I'm going to be passing on to Robert Ward from the IISS in just a moment to introduce our distinguished panel who are going to be helping us navigate some of this complex terrain. We're really thrilled to be working once again with IISS. Thank you, Robert, for this, I think, ongoing collaboration at this point. And I'll just say a few words of introduction to Japan House London for those of you who haven't visited before. Since opening in 2018, we've presented any number of exhibitions, events such as these, along with film screenings, conferences, so much more, all with the mission of presenting the very best of Japanese cultures here in London. So we're a hybrid institute. We have not only this auditorium, but a shop, a restaurant, a library, a gallery, and in fact, our current exhibition, Hyakko, an overview of contemporary craft in Japan, will be open this evening till 8:30. So we do encourage you to stick around, see the exhibition after this event. There will be a drinks reception for those of you joining in person, and we're very grateful to our collaborators, House of Suntory, Asahi, and Sake Samurai for helping us with that reception. So without further ado, please do join me in welcoming Robert Ward. Robert is the IISS Japan Chair, as well as their Director of Geoeconomics and Strategy. Robert, over to you. Thanks so much.
So thank you very much, Sam, for that introduction, and wonderful to be back at Japan House again. This is our third iteration of this event, and we're always thrilled to be able to be working with Sam and the team, wonderful team at Japan House. So this is an International Institute for Strategic Studies Japan Chair Programme event, and we're going to be looking at Japan-Europe Defence Industrial Cooperation. As I said, we're delighted to be hosting this event with the kind support of the superb Japan House London and its stellar team here in London's Kensington. And as Sam said, the Hyakko exhibition, absolutely stunning, some absolutely wonderful stuff out there. I think it was about more than 100 craftspeople are represented through this wonderful stuff, so do have a look. Absolutely exquisite, wonderful stuff. I'm also pleased to say that we have a fantastic audience here at Japan House and online as well, which I think is evidence of a wide interest in this subject. So a special thank you, as always, to those of you online in particular who are getting up early or staying up late to listen to this session. I'm Robert Ward, as Sam said, and I'm the Japan Chair and Director of Geoeconomics and Strategy at the IISS, and I'll be facilitating this event, which, given the current geopolitical backdrop, not least in the Gulf, I think is highly timely. The security of the Indo-Pacific and the Euro-Atlantic regions is closely interconnected. We've seen this in Russia's ongoing war against Ukraine, and we're now seeing it with the current Iran crisis. As Japan's Prime Minister Kishida Fumio said presciently back in 2022, Ukraine today could be East Asia tomorrow. Intercontinental security theatres are now linked, putting a premium on the kind of cooperation between allies and partners that we will be discussing today. Against this background, and given the worsening security environment in both regions, Japan and the European countries have been strengthening their defence industrial cooperation, and this has been evident in recent top-level engagements between the two. Earlier this month, for example, the NATO Deputy Secretary-General Radmila Shekarinska visited Japan and met with Japanese Defence Minister Koizumi Shinjiro to discuss key priority areas of cooperation, including in the defence industrial space. The NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte was, of course, in Japan in April last year to talk about defence production and other issues. Shekarinska's visit comes as Japan negotiates to join NATO's flagship programme to support defence-focused startups, the Defence Innovation Accelerator for the North Atlantic, known as DIANA. And Japan is also seeking to join the EU's Joint Development and Production Financing Scheme, Security Action for Europe, or SAFE. And in Japan itself, Prime Minister Takaichi Sanai's administration is promoting major reforms of Japan's defence policy, including the revisions of the guidelines for the country's defence transfer policy, which may happen as soon as this spring, as well as revisions of the national security strategy and associated documents by the end of this year. So a lot happening in this space. To discuss this timely topic, we have assembled an intimidatingly gifted panel of experts whose experience spans government, the military and businesses, both large and small, in Japan, the UK and the EU. Our wonderful and brilliant panellists will help us navigate some of the strategic eddies and currents of defence industrial cooperation between Japan and European partners. So I think, audience, you're in for a real treat with today's discussion. So introductions to our guests in order of speaking. On my far left, Professor Tsuruoka Michito, who has flown in from Japan especially for this event, so a warm welcome to London, Mishto. Michito Sensei is Professor at the Faculty of Policy Management at Keio University in Japan and concurrently Deputy Director of the Keio Centre for Strategy, KCS. He's also Senior Associate at the Centre for Security, Diplomacy and Strategy, CSDS, at the Brussels School of Governance, VUB. Prior to his current role, he's held various positions in the Japanese government, including Japan's Ministry of Defence and the Embassy of Japan in Belgium. Michito's recent publications include NATO in Search of Its Role, the Reality of the US-European Alliance, which was published in Japanese in 2024. So warm welcome again, Michito. Our second speaker is Julie Marionneau, and she serves as the Director of International Relations at ADS Group, the UK's premier trade group for companies in the defence, security and related sectors. It also runs the Farnborough International Air Show. Julie's career, again quite extraordinary breadth here, Julie, spans high-level roles in government, military and international organisations, reflecting her deep expertise in global security, policy and legal frameworks. Before joining ADS, Julie was a Senior Research Fellow and Head of Business Engagement at the Policy Exchange think tank here in London, and her career earlier includes service as a legal advisor in the French Air Force and at NATO Command, specialising in armed conflict law, operational law and air law. Julie has also held roles in the Office of UN Under-Secretary General Jane Hall-Lute at the United Nations Secretariat and at NATO's Joint Force Command. So warm welcome to you, Julie. And our third speaker, who's also flown in from abroad, from Rome. You arrived only hours ago, so we're all very relieved to have you with us, is Dr. Nanae Baldauff, who is Senior Associate Fellow, non-resident at the NATO Defence College in Italy, and currently the inaugural Japan-focused Indo-Pacific Research Fellow at the Asia-Pacific Foundation of Canada. Nanae Sensei is also Associate Research Fellow at the United Nations University Institute on Comparative Regional Integration Studies in Belgium. Nanae has given lectures at numerous universities, including courses at the NATO Defence College, and is the author of a monograph, Japan's Defence Engagement in the Indo-Pacific Deterrence, Strategic Partnership and Stable Order Building, which was published in 2024. Before I give the floor to Michito Sensei to start with, a couple of housekeeping points from me. Each speaker will speak for around 8 to 10 minutes, after which they and I will have a joint discussion on the issues raised. I will then open the floor to questions from our audience. And audience, please state your affiliation when you ask your question. It helps our speakers to calibrate their responses. And for those of you online, we'll be using Zoom's Q&A function located at the bottom of your screens. I can see your questions on my computer here, and you're welcome to type in your questions at any time. Again, please include your affiliation and your name when typing in a question. And the whole event will last for about 1 hour and 15 minutes. So, Michito, over to you, please.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for the very kind introduction, and really happy to be here at Japan House today. So the Japan-Europe Defense Industrial Cooperation, this is something that now more and more people are talking about. But 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, no one actually was really talking about it. So I first started doing research on Europe-Japan and the UK-Japan relations more than think 25 years ago or so, that I was always asked why you are interested in such an exotic topic without any substance. So but now that after 25 years, that it looks that my sort of passion in this topic has been very much vindicated. So it's really great. And also in the Japanese domestic context as well, that the defense industry issues haven't been quite sort of a popular topic among the public. And also politicians were really sort of careful in talking about that. Because still that if you talk about, for example, the idea of selling weapons abroad, then immediately that you hear criticisms that, oh, you want to be a merchant of death. That's sort of a discourse. It's still there. But what is quite interesting is that the context within which we discuss defense industrial issues in Japan has changed quite a lot, evolved quite a lot over the past 5, 6, 7 years or so. And now that the government led by Prime Minister Takaichi has designated defense industry as one of their 17 priority strategic areas. So and the government is really committed to reform the various schemes and frameworks for defense industry things, and particularly including the arms export. And then in that context, why Europe from a Japanese perspective? So this is just natural, that because with the United States, Japan has been doing a lot for many, many years, as you can imagine. And then, so beyond the United States, if you look around the world and if you look for your friends and partners, then many of those are the countries with which Japan shares values and strategic interests are in Europe. So the NATO countries and the EU countries, so they are here. And also, of course, we have South Korea or Australia as like-minded partners in the Indo-Pacific region. But when it comes to defense industry, of course, you need to have a capability and foundation. And for that purpose, then it's just natural for Japan to look for partners in Europe. So some of the major countries in Europe, it's just natural sort of choice. But I still see a series of challenges in Japan. So one of which I believe is that still it's not quite clear what goals Japan has when it comes to thinking about defense industrial cooperation with other like-minded countries. So there are, I think, broadly 4 possible goals for Japan's expanding activities with other countries when it comes to defense industry. And the first is so this is very much a stated objective in Japan's national security strategy or defense strategy, that they need to strengthen defense production base in Japan. So this is really important because that for many years that Japan's defense industrial base had been declining. So now that we need to change that trend, and then we have been very much emphasizing the need to strengthen defense industrial base or infrastructure. But at the same time, you can also say that as a sort of second goal, that you can say that the export weapons or selling weapons abroad could also be seen as a strategic goal for Japan. But and at the same time, to make money is also an important goal, because without making money, this business cannot be sustainable. But at the same time, for politicians, that it's not quite still easy to say that we need to sell weapons abroad to make money. So there's still some public the hesitancy in this regard is there. So how to overcome that sort of a negative perceptions about making money by selling weapons abroad. But at the same time, the fourth sort of a goal could be that strengthen strategic relations with other countries. So by selling weapons or by producing weapons together or developing weapons together, so you can strengthen strategic relations, partnerships with like-minded countries, like the GCAP project, the project to jointly develop next generation jet fighters with the UK and Italy. So that by doing this, it's quite natural that Japan is going to have the stronger, more intimate, closer, deeper relations with the UK and Italy. But I talked about the 4 goals, but in what order? So priority, how to prioritize those 4 is not quite clear. So if you talk to government people, that yes, they always emphasize the importance of strengthening defense industrial base or infrastructure in Japan. So from that perspective, you can see the idea of sending weapons abroad can be seen as a means to achieve the goal of strengthening Japan's defense industrial base. But means or goals, that sort of a distinction is really something that the people agree on. That's not clear yet. So how to prioritize these different goals, that is still a bit of a challenge. And the other challenges include how to strengthen. So this is very much related, of course, the idea of strengthening defense industrial base, but how to strengthen, how to increase the production capability. That is really a remaining challenge. So what is clear is that we need more investment, but as far as I see that in Japan, that there is still a sort of a unfounded confidence that Japan is really good at manufacturing. Yes, I fully understand that we want to believe that way, but when it comes to, of course, defense production, that's not really the case. That's a huge problem. So how to secure enough number of people and how to train engineers. So that's a huge challenge, particularly in light of the decline of Japan's population. And also vis-a-vis the United States. So Japan produces a lot of licensed things. So in various respects that Japan depends on critical components to be imported from the United States. So now that we talk a lot about the need to increase the production capability of the Patriot interceptors, but the critical components like seekers, we need to import from the United States. So even if Japan is capable of or willing and prepared to increase production, that's still there, as long as you cannot get enough number of seekers and other critical components from the United States. If you cannot secure enough number, then you cannot increase your production capability. So there are some bottlenecks. So it's not about the Japan facing challenges, but to some extent, and in actually an important way, that we depend on the U.S. production capability as well. So and finally, just one word on the GCAP again. That it's really interesting that more and more countries are getting interested in GCAP. So whether by joining the project or the interest in buying the product, but one of the a bit tricky aspect of this is that one of the reasons why more and more countries are interested in GCAP is that it's not an American aircraft. So the non-US factor or US factor that it's not American. So this sort of the relative importance of this is increasing, but of course it's really awkward for Japan to advertise that this is non-American. That's why that you need to buy that. that sort of message, I don't think Japanese government is prepared to give. But still, this non-U.S. element, I think it's something that we need to talk more about. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michito. So a couple of things stuck in my mind. One, your first point, that it's natural for this Japan and Europe to cooperate defence industrial activities. But you had one question, which I think you were sort of sceptical about Japan's goals, with actually having goals that in priority order.
There's no consensus on that.
Exactly. And then you said an unfounded confidence in manufacturing capabilities. Maybe we can come back to that later on. And also, of course, the increasing popularity of GCAP. So fantastic. Thank you, Michito. Julie, over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It is a pleasure to contribute to today's discussion on Japan-European defense industry cooperation. I agree with Michito. Quite an exotic topic maybe 15 years ago, not anymore. It is a significant strategic and industrial relevance in recent years. I think we met 15 years ago in Paris, and it was more on a bilateral kind of topic. We never mentioned even once, I think, European as Japan-EU kind of reset or engagement. So I think here we'll see later, but I think we should draw a line between what Japan is doing with the EU and then what Japan is doing with European country individually. But maybe just to kickstart, and there's a bit of scene setting. On one hand, I think Japan has taken major step to expand its international defense partnership in general, modernizing its export control regulation, which is key, to export, and positioning itself as a trusted collaborator on advanced capability development. We're talking about cutting edge technology, and that's what Japan is really good at. At the same time, European nations have been increasing engagement with partners that, like Japan, they are interested with that partners that bring technological depth, industrial resilience, and an aligned strategic outlook. And I think that's I agree with you on that point. From the EU side of the spectrum, we've seen recently, necessarily in the past 2 years, the External Affairs Office, IISS, and Kaja Kallas herself has been very engaging on EU-Japan strategic dialogue, and even recently at Munich meeting with Minister Kozumi. Their main interests obviously are in defense industrial cooperation. It's stated as it, we can find it, but also maritime security, cyber security, I think I've listed a couple of them, space security, hybrid threat, and information manipulation resilience. So that's the keen interest from a EU-Japan collaboration. And finally, for the UK, what does it mean? We have a lot of frameworks. We've been very proactively engaging bilaterally with Japan, from Hiroshima Accord, or for the recent one. But bilateral industrial cooperation is not just about signing overarching agreements. It is very concrete for the UK because, as you said, we have the GCAP program, and it represents a landmark trilateral cooperation that demonstrates that the UK, Japan, Italy can co-design, they can co-develop, they can all these complex capabilities. But ultimately, the relevance of Japan-Europe cooperation goes beyond individual programs. So on one hand, this is a testament of that what we can do and that what Japan can do very efficiently with any European country with who they share a strategic outlook. But at the same time, it should go beyond the individual program. Why so? Because Russian invasion, ongoing war with Ukraine, the current Middle East crisis underscore the need for trusted partners, for building a more resilient supply chain, and for accelerating technological development. So it's what we do now and what we need to do now to engage on innovation so we keep this cutting edge technology up front. Finally, this degradation of geopolitical context has highlighted the critical role for industrial capacity, innovation, in sustaining the long-term security. And I think in this context, Japan-UK technological cooperation is not simply desirable, it is essential. For example, we need to pull expertise in air defense, sensors, propulsion, cyber, early warning, AI, artificial intelligence, or uncrewed vehicles, because this will bring the collective ability to innovate and to produce at pace. So this is very important. And maybe finally, I'll take question, easily, but if I may, to bring into this European-Japan cooperation, defense industry cooperation angle, what does this mean in this context for UK-Japan industry specifically? I think we can highlight 3 points. First, it means working closer because our industrial strengths are deeply complementary. So we can say that Japan excellence is about manufacturing precision. So maybe not just manufacturing in defense needs to beef up. A lot of primes are very good at dual use equipment, and they have a small section doing defense production. So this is a transformation, I think, in the industrial base of Japan, which we're eager to see. But in general, the Japanese excellence is manufacturing skills, precision, electronics, robotics, dual use technology, and space. What about the UK? Well, UK capacity is about system integration, advanced design, complex platform development. So this is very important. This is my first, the complementarity of both nations. Second point, I think this opens an opportunity for new pathway for Japan and UK small and medium enterprise, as well as mid-tiers, to engage in co-development. Easy to say, very easy to say, difficult to do in practice. So I think as cooperation framework mature, we will see more and more of that. But this will need like trade association, industry, a lot of stakeholders to put that together, because there's still a cultural, I think, shift to be done to allow more co-design, co-cooperation between small and medium companies. And third, it is an opportunity to strengthen industrial resilience. I think Japan, in looking for more cooperation with European partners, is looking at diversifying his supply chain, and I think this will strengthen, will eliminate any vulnerabilities in the future. So I think that's the point you made about GCAP being a non-US. I don't think you need to advertise it. It's and that's the beauty of it, because it's by design, non-ITAR. It's by design, free of any entanglement of the foreign affairs policy from the US, and I think that will be a success in itself for the future. That's I'm sure.
You're advertising that.
Yes, I am actually. But I believe that, and finally, not just maybe a quick conclusive point of today's discussion will be as much because of you about political and strategic rationale for the cooperation, but it is also about the more practical questions. So, for example, how do we support cross-border supply chain integration? What enablers government on both sides need to put in place to fast forward this bilateral cooperation? And how do we ensure as well that GCAP is the beginning of a broader sustained partnership? So what is beyond GCAP, and how we can use GCAP to do much more collaboration on advanced technology? Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. The relevance of Japan-European cooperation going beyond individual programs, I think that's important. Also, the complementarity of Japan-UK relationship, and your final point there about what government can do to enable, to provide a tailwind for this cooperation. Thank you.
Great.
Nanae.
Yes, great. So, thank you so much for the invitation, and it's really my pleasure and honor to be here and to be in this panel. This is really exciting topic. I'd like to start by distinguishing cooperation and collaboration and integration. So, cooperation, sort of the beginning of our relationship, right? We meet, and this is an initial. We may talk about maybe not having any specific project in mind, but let's cooperate, right? So, and then there could be a agreement, signing already MOU of some sort of defense cooperation, but there's much more. And then institutionalization of defense cooperation starts, right? So you have 4 major defense cooperation agreements that make this institutionalization. First is MOU, right? This is not legally binding, but this is the first step. And it's really amazing to see how many agreements have been signed so far in the last 10 years, really. And then the order, the next one, which one, doesn't really matter, but because it depends on the country. But there are like next one is also the Security of Information Agreement, right? This is obviously very important. And then there are two more that really relates to the military, the Armed Forces Corporation. So this is AXA, so Acquisition of a Cross-Servicing Agreement, and also reciprocal access agreement. So this directly relates to facilitating the military joint exercises training, but that has huge implications for defense industry, because an armed forces of one country sees what weapon is being used by the other member states, the other country, armed forces, and then the industry behind it, right? So the more they do joint training, joint exercises, obviously this is sort of the beginning of a relationship, and then so this is institutionalized by these agreements and absolutely important. And again, the number of agreements that have been signed by Japan and a number of European countries is really, it's ongoing, obviously. So there's a cooperation becomes institutionalized by these agreements and then becomes collaboration. So collaboration can be, this is more of a joint projects. An example, I mean, UK, Japan have many collaborations, but let's just take another example of, for example, Japan, France, Germany on the railgun technology. This was more of a sharing of information, but still, this is a trilateral, tripartite collaboration on railgun technology. Another example is AUKUS PILA 2. This is a testing of advanced underwater communication technology, right? So that's another example. And then comes the integration, and that's really GCAP, obviously. This is, there's now the company called Edgewing. So it's an international joint venture established by BAE and Leonardo and Japan Aircraft Industry Enhancement. So but we need more of these. We need more than just GCAP. That's what I think, because there's just one integrated project, right? I think. So, but I mean, you know, if you look at Japan, I mean, Japan has basically shifting from this sort of almost prohibited defense industry as something that's very prohibited or highly discouraged to highly promoted. And how do we do that, right? This doesn't happen overnight. And obviously, these agreements really help. So it's step by step. And I think really the military to military cooperation. So it's really by doing joint exercises, joint training, staff to staff talk. So, you know, unless you have a specific project you want to do with Japan, it's very difficult. Because by doing exercises, then you're really, you know, well, that's what you're using, right? That's great. And then you see the industry that's behind it. So it's, at the end of the day, it's a human-to-human relationship that starts, I think. So Japan is still in the middle of this shift from something that's very prohibited to something very promoted. And so Japan is still trying to find that way. And I think there are four factors that we actually have to really keep in mind when we talk about Japan and Europe. Japan's defense industry, it has been shrinking, right? That is a hard fact because of low profitability. But a robust and resilient defense industrial base provides the foundation for military advantage. So we absolutely need to, we cannot let it die. But it was dying, so how do we save it? Second, persistent and increasing threats, of course, coming from our neighbors, China, North Korea, and Russia, both in quantity and quality. So, I mean, if we didn't have this consistent, persistent threats coming, we would not have been so under pressure, perhaps. But that's the external pressure. And we see also that our existing capabilities are not anymore sufficient to counter that. So, such as hypersonic weapons. And then the third factor we have to think about is the security challenges that expand beyond defense, so it's economic factor, economic sector, supply chain vulnerabilities, threats to critical infrastructure, so that's the economic security bit that comes in. And the last factor, I think, is the changing nature of war. Really seen in Ukraine, but really helped by the digitalization of defense. So defense is going digital also. And this is through the application of emerging and disruptive technologies. So we have to sort of do all of, these are the factors that are surrounding us, and yeah, there's a lot that we have to do. And this does not just apply to Japan, I believe, so this is applicable to European states as well.
Thank you, Nanae. So cooperation, the working together journey, cooperation, collaboration, integration. I'm wondering whether we've mistitled this event because we called it cooperation. So maybe
I never really paid attention to this, but I think we can actually, divide it. We can actually dig a little deeper and then differentiate between So we've gone through we've gone through the cooperation, the beginning, right?
Yes.
We've gone a bit deeper. That's a good thing.
Thank you for pointing that out. Note to self for next time. You've also reminded us of the journey that Japan has travelled, which I think we need to keep on reminding ourselves, because from prohibited to encouraged, as you say, on defence. Thank you for reminding us about economic security as well, because security is now many things, and also the changing nature of war, which I think we'll come back to in the Q&A. So we've got a brief period now where I'm just going to ask some questions to our exceptional panel and to get a discussion going, and then we'll throw open the question to the audience. We've already got a question or two coming in online in very tiny writing, so I'll have to look. It's like absolutely minuscule, isn't it? Anyway, I'll try to read that. So a bit later. So Mishto, just I think it was you that mentioned the government of Japan's move to revise its defence equipment and technology transfer guidelines quite soon, and that could mark a sort of turning point in Japan's defence transfer policy, including scrapping these so-called 5 categories, which limited export of finished products. How do you view the opportunities and challenges that can arise, that could arise from these policy revisions? And perhaps as a coda to that, where do you think Japan should focus its efforts within this sort of broader picture? Because you did talk about goals and priorities earlier.
The idea of abolishing the 5 categories that are allowed to be exported. In terms of substance, I don't see there's going to be a huge change overnight. I don't really think so, because there have been various sort of ways to navigate this, even under the current regulations. So, for example, like when it comes to exporting frigate, for example, that as long as it is a joint development, it has been possible to export frigates, but after abolition of 5 categories, that you can say that without making it a joint development thing, that you can export outright. So that's sort of a symbolic change still matters, because under the current or even previous regulations, that the perceptions have been that it's always difficult to get permission from the government to export things. But now that without those categories, that now you can sort of sense you can see a perception that the government is actively encouraging companies to think about selling weapons abroad. So this sort of the change of tone, a change of perceptions, I think could be something that we can expect.
Nanae, I can see you nodding vigorously there. Do you want to add anything?
Well, first, I just wanted to correct myself first. There are actually one more agreement that is important. So it's a defense equipment transfer technology agreement. So there are 5 agreements that are key. But anyway, export control, yes. So I think there are also two. We can distinguish this defense industry cooperation. One is selling finished products, and the other is joint development, joint research. And for me, I'm more focused on that part. So that is very difficult. So if you actually look at EU, so European Defence Fund, you know, so within the EU there is this huge push to research together, spend the money together, buy together, all that stuff, right, within the EU. How do you do this? So if you want to do a joint, if you want to get the money from European Defence Fund, you have to form a consortium of 3 entities, at least, from 3 different countries. You have to constantly doing business matchmaking. And you see this happening all over. And sometimes it's easier to observe a small country within the EU doing it. Because big countries like UK, Germany, France, it's very difficult to actually have access to the person national point of contact of the EU, the European Defence Fund. And there's a huge competition, obviously, and you have to be in Munich all the time, or you have to be in London. So because I live in Luxembourg, tiny country, but I see government is very flexible, very encouraging business matching all the time. So when I see that, and obviously Japan, you have to have a legal entity established within the EU first. So that's a big thing, right? And who has come to do that? I'm not talking about the big companies. Big companies are fine. They have the resources, they have the money, you already have your infrastructure, your human resources. But the small companies, the startups, they are the ones that want to come. They are the ones that have ideas. And they are the ones that want to, do maybe the Arctic defense, because they have maybe the GNSS solutions that they can, So it's really fascinating. When I think about this, but then there was this, so that's very hard, right, for Japanese startups to actually open a subsidiary in an EU country to do joint research, because you have to have that network, and you have to do this all the time, constantly. And this can be facilitated by the government, this can be facilitated by colleagues. I mean, you just have to be constantly doing networking. And how can you do that from Japan, right? So how can, and then the embassies around EU, it's not just talking about the big EU countries, but small ones sometimes are such stars, right? So it's really, but European Defence Fund and JBIC recently decided to jointly invest in ISI and ISR Constellation project. So somebody's having good ideas. So that's something every EU countries would be loved to have this kind of project, right? But anyway, so.
No, I have a question for you actually, Nanae. Would you say that because Japan, as the UK, they are a third country nation when it comes to the EU, so joining and participating in any joint program is EDF, the European Defence Fund, it will be applied more stringent rule than EU members. So do you think that Japan, I mean, is it worth the effort for a Japanese startup to go all the way through to have also, more Japanese embassy people doing that, when you know that IP is not the ideal rules that will apply when you're part of this, when you know that so many criteria have to be lined up, whether, you can actually go much faster and easily with UK government and UK industry, and other European partners that have the strength that you have identified, whether it is space, AI, robotics, or counter hypersonic, which I'm sure you're aware, and you're very interested. So my question is that worth the effort?
I think it depends on the sector. I'm looking at space industry as a subsector of defense industry, so I'm really looking at some of space startups, but for some, yes. For some, but and they are coming also. These guys are coming to Europe, a bit discreetly, but so that's one. But the other that the government can do is, for example, NATO. You have high visibility projects. So these are the multilateral cooperation capability projects, right? It's a bit like European Union's PESCO. But so high visibility projects, Australia is part of, there are 30 projects or so. Australia is part of the maritime unmanned capability, I think that's what it's called. So the government can push NATO, so they're doing for Diana, so Japan is asking NATO to see if Japan could be participating in Diana. But another thing that they could do is to join one of the high visibility project, because by joining projects, I think that's where then, you know, it encourages companies to join. So, yeah.
Julie, you mentioned SMEs in your remarks, and SMEs are you know, where you get a lot of innovation, a lot of look at Ukraine, for example. A lot of small companies are innovating in ways that would have been thought, you know, would be are incredibly novel. Could you say a bit more about the potential role of SMEs in Japan, European Defence Industrial Cooperation, and on the European side, it strikes me that there's so many hurdles in the way of funding, financing, and so on in Europe, and sort of perhaps impeding the development of SMEs, impeding the cooperation that we've been talking about.
Yes, so the role of SME, I mean, ADS as a group, as a trade association, represent 1,800 companies, so on a cross sector, not just defense, and 97% are SMEs. I work personally, you know, on the industrial cooperation with my counterparts in Japan, whether it is IISS Japan or JAXA from the space sector, which, you know, Japan has a different kind of landscape. For example, they don't have one trade association, they have different trade associations for different domains. And I think that's one of the possible channel and way to get SMEs to work together. But SME, they like to be part of the supply chain. So they like to work, we go back to on project with primes, you know. You have identified a project and you want to be part of the supply chain. It is more difficult to bring the right SME together. So they say, we're going to partner and we're going to be the next unicorn, or we're going to be the next prime, or, you know, or scale up together. Because there is so much to do to understand, you know, how, you know, it's not just a money issue, it's also culturally, how do you partner? So one key point, I mean, that's, you know, trade association do is like exhibition, you know, matchmaking. You can do as many trade missions you want. You need to build more the right approach and the right framework in order to make sure that SMEs, Japanese SMEs, are feeling confident to invest in the UK, for example, or to partner with the UK company, and the same thing for UK company to go to Japan. I think one thing that you mentioned, I think Michito and yourself, is there are a lot of dual use also SME. When I visited Japan, you know, they can have defense application, but they're not necessarily aware. So it's really difficult as well for defense SMEs in the UK to be aware simply that this Japanese company is existing. They might not have also the language skills required to do that. So there's so many, I think we need to do much more, like collectively government trade association, to help to foster bilateral cluster, for example, defense cluster between the two countries, that people recognize themselves, you know, center of interest, and then you help grow, you know, an expertise, people beyond just touch point like, oh, I'm going to the ACI Japan or Farnborough International or any defense exhibition. Because those are just touch points where you exchange business card, it's very important, but it does not replace the continuity and the, you know, building skills on how to do business with Japan, in Japan, you know, for UK SMEs, or vice versa, how to do business in the UK with, because we have a lot of support, for example, for SMEs in the UK. That's some, if you have an office here that you can benefit as well. So I think there's so much we can do here and be slightly more creative than we are now.
Mishito, I can see you nodding also vigorously there. Did you want to add to what Julie said, perhaps from a Japanese standpoint?
Yeah, this is actually not a new problem. So between the EU and Japan and the NATO and Japan, that yes, despite the fact that we've been talking about more cooperation or more projects, but still, we don't know very much about what the other side is doing. So how to match and how to connect. It's still a huge challenge. And now that more and more focus is on SMEs and the challenges are actually getting more difficult. So that's actually the reality.
So I can feel the audience itching to ask some questions. I can feel the mood people want to ask. So I've got many more questions that I want to ask, but open questions to the audience. If any of you has a question, just please put your hand up. We have a question. Yes, yes, you go for it, and affiliation name, please.
Hello, my name is Dariusz Lis. I'm studying PhD. I'm doing PhD at Granted University in Defense and Security Studies. I have a question about the nature of cooperation, because in Europe in the last 20 or 30 years you had many attempts at cooperation among different countries. So I'm just wondering what would make this JCAP special, so Japan, Italy and UK could succeed when the others have failed over the last 40 years.
Does any of you want to take?
Yeah, it's really special. And but what is quite interesting is that when we started the GCAP project, I think the level of realization that this is really unique and this is really important and this is really long-term thing was very low. So, but now that there's more and more realization that this is going to change the very nature of relations between these three countries, because when you have the jointly developed jet fighter operating at the same time, then that means that you are more likely to do more joint training, for example. And if you do more joint training, then that means that you know each other, and the level of interoperability is going to be increased. So then that could be translated into more joint activities sometime in the future. So that sort of a relationship is something that we are now building. So it's not just the technological cooperation. It's not just about a single project to make something. No, it's going to change the nature of the relationship between the three countries. So this sort of a strategic aspect is at the beginning of this process that the realization was very low, but now it's getting much higher.
And there is also, the aspect of governance. They are created a trilateral. JIGO is one way, where we can pilot the GCAP program, and this is quite unique. If you take, for example, I mean, it's not like the same parallel, but AUKUS, fantastic program, different company across 3 countries, Australia, US, and UK, but they don't have the equivalent of JIGO, for example, so far. We have a representative of AUKUS, Stephen Grove, and we have a representative in the US, and same thing in Japan, but there's not so much governance around it, and I think this is here to stay, and we will look at this model, I think, quite positively.
Thank you. Simon, I think that's you.
Thank you. Simon Shelton speaking as an Associate Fellow from RUSI. Thank you very much, everybody, for wonderful comments. I really want to build on something you're saying and just ask what all of the panelists think about what is there both nationally and internationally, multinationally, what appetite is there for what I would call process and cultural alignment that would certainly bring Japan into areas where already we do have quite a lot of alignment. I'm thinking of everything, much I've mentioned, export control, information security management, standards, as in NATO standards, export control, we've mentioned funding structures, even the way that defense industry associations are structured. There's a big difference at the moment, particularly between Japan and the others. Do you see there's an appetite for national and multinational leadership to align those to make, if you like, the ITAR-free world between UK, Europe and Japan in defence more productive?
Nanae, you were nodding there. Do you want to?
Yeah. So yes, great question. One avenue for Japan to align to NATO, I guess, industry framework or this culture would be to really engage with the NIAG, so NATO Industrial Advisory Group. Obviously, this is not a new group. Maybe many of you know this group. It's been around since 1970 something. So obviously, this is a dinosaur. Probably not something that you can expect innovation, but
it's not a decision-making body as well.
No,
so,
that's right. But what Japan would benefit so much is the constant interaction. Right? It's the meeting 3 times a year, and then talk and network and okay, this is how you're doing. So this is what Japan really needs. And so now that we have Japan's mission, now that we have Japan's mission to NATO, so there will be Japan's defense attachés were attending on behalf of Japan's defense industry. But they're here for 3 years and then leave, and then their new ones come, and so there's no consistency. There's no institutional memory is gone, and now we have somebody more from the ATLA and the MOD, but they're not the defense industry. So somebody coming from SCHAC or JADI or a new body that is willing to have a permanent presence in Brussels that is not the Japanese embassy. So that is something that Japan has to do. Yeah, so this is not diplomats, this is industry. Yeah. I have an idea, but
no, go ahead.
Mishto, go for it.
Can I just a couple of things? And one is that the Japan needs to adjust. The cultural alignment is lacking, that's for sure. So when you talk about GCAP in Japan, that still there are so many people in Japan who question why Italy is there. Why it's just the Japan-UK bilateral thing should be much more efficient. That sort of discussions are there. And that is a great evidence that those people don't understand how this international armament cooperation or international arms business is working. Because Italy has much more experience in working in this area. So Japan is the latecomer. Japan is the baby, sort of, in this process. So this sort of a perception need to be changed. So that's one thing. And the another thing is that the Japan needs to adjust to NATO standardization. So NATO standards are there because the UK and Italy are NATO countries. So it's just obvious that the Japan needs to adjust to that. But at the same time, given the fact that we are saying that GCAP is a 6th generation jet fighters, which means that we are supposed to use new technologies where still NATO standardization agreements are not available, which means that Japan is to be part of the process of shaping new STANAG. New STANAG. So it's not just about the adjusting to NATO, but at the same time, it's about Japan shaping NATO standardization in the future.
Thank you. Taka.
That's great.
Thank you very much. My name is Taka Mogi. I'm director of JETRO. JETRO is a government organization under METI. And thank you very much for the fascinating panel. And actually, I really had an experience, which all the panelists has mentioned, that as in the first week of February, JETRO and METI co-organized the first government-led dual-use business delegation to Finland and Sweden. Well, I'm talking about dual-use, not prime, but I understand there should be a common nature in these 2 sectors. And I'm really fascinated by the comments that, well, it's true that Japan is in a very early stage. So this business delegation was very successful because we wanted to test how our technology or the product would be valued by the Europe. We have to know about that. And to do so, we have to show and bring the companies. So actually there was 25 government and private business sectors there. And the highlight was, one of the highlights was the MOU between IISS and IIHI as well. And another thing is that so this is my base of my question. The reason why the Nordic countries was first selected as the destination of the business mission was that they were very keen on international corporations. And well, there should be many reasons, but the particular reason is that they have to do international cooperation or collaboration to fulfill the wartime demand or to prepare for the wartime demand. Because if you do it with a single country, the size of the market or the size of the resource is equal to the size of the budget. So to well prepared, there's actually quite little options, and the international cooperation is one thing. So my question is that it is very natural that those mid-sized country is keen on international cooperation, but at the same time, there are some observations that relatively larger European nations, the willingness for the international cooperation is sometimes differs. Well, it differs from the companies to companies or areas to areas. So as we are here in the UK, I really want to understand and get encouraged by the willingness of the British defense industry for international corporations. Thank you.
Thank you, Taka. That's
Yes.
got Julie's name written on it.
Well, let me reassure you that the willingness is certainly here. At Farnborough International, we organize every 2 years, so it's an air show that happens in July, and it's not just a domestic event, it's an international event that brings commercial aircraft, but also more and more, as because of the geopolitical context, defense industry and defense exhibitor. We have a huge Japanese delegation, and we organize as part of it, and Japan was the first country to do that and to have an interest in doing it, defense, what we call a defense industry dialogue. Why we do that? We do that to educate, to get together, and to tackle one topic, panel discussion like we do today, but maybe more specific, then keynote speaker from both sides, and then 100 companies, like how many, last time I think it was 80 companies from the Japanese delegation, and the same we try to mirror on the UK side, like networking and meeting each other. But then it's not just a one-off again, we go to Japan and we try to make the best out of it. So this is just to explain you that there is something already existing at the operational level, that I would say, defense industry dialogue, that show the willingness of defense industry too. And then primes, they have also their own particular project that they do with Japan, and they don't need necessarily trade association or government to be involved in. But I think there's two different ways here of boosting the cooperation. On one side, SMEs and MITs, they need more assistance. And on the other side, prime company, they do need also the political dialogue to continue, and the strategic dialogue to continue and to be plugged in. So, but yeah, so the willingness is here for sure.
So I'm going to go to, in the last 4 minutes, I've got a question online, and I need about size 18 font to be able to read it without looking very closely.
I can.
From my IISS colleague Esther Sabatino, and she says, what role does the EU-Japan Defence and Security Partnership play in the definition of further defence industrial cooperation between Japan and EU countries? And the strategic partnership also allows Japan to be involved in the Security Action for Europe Safe initiative. Has this opportunity translated into deeper defence industrial cooperation yet? So, quite a lot in that question. Do you want to, Nanae, do you want to each have one stab at it before we close?
Yeah, so just very quickly. So Japan-EU is defense industry cooperation is something that is not really translated yet, but for SAFE, Japan applied to join. And so we're not in yet. They're looking at Turkey and South Korea first, and so Japan is after that. And just EU-Japan, maybe there is the space, also the IRIS, where EU's third space asset IRIS Square and Japan's constellation system, there will be some sort of joint cooperation. We don't know what that is. Maybe some of you know, but anyway, it's not out in the public information yet. So.
Thank you, Nanae. Julie?
No, I mean, maybe to complement SAFE, I don't know if everybody knows what it is. It's another acronym from the EU, but it's basically, in a few words, it's one of the instruments that it's a loan scheme, so that allows countries that apply to borrow with a lower interest rate. So not all the EU countries basically have applied. If you take Germany, no problem to have a good interest rate, not part of SAFE. So the idea of borrowing together then allows, the Commission, what the Commission is trying to do with the SAFE scheme is to force, through the money, countries to collaborate together and to put jointly projects. So you apply for SAFE, for loan, but then you have to present at the same time a plan for different projects. So I think it's really good that Japan is doing that. As you know, the UK has one round of negotiation to be part of SAFE. It was a good idea, but for various reasons, and maybe one of the reasons was that the EU was asking for 10%, the equivalent of 10% of the defense budget of the UK to be part of the SAFE loan. So, you have to really balance you have to really think about it carefully because the money is not, exactly infinite. So, and the budget, we need to do a lot domestically and internationally. So why do we prefer SAFE or bilateral cooperation? But certainly, maybe there will be a round 2 for the UK to be part of SAFE, but under different criteria. But one other thing which is, I think, important for Japan is to keep in mind, so once you are, if you're successful in your application, you have to find a partner within, people who apply on a project that is of your interest. Yeah. So where are the priorities that are domestically correspond to what other EU members would like to do? Which is not necessarily maybe uncrewed vehicles, a lot of things on drones, a lot of appetite for that, but not on everything, yeah.
But that's good, this external pressure to have to find a project.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good pressure, I think, for Japan.
Mishto in 40 seconds.
Oh, 40 seconds, okay. So the things such as the strategic partnership agreement between EU and Japan or the security and defense partnership are there to generate perceptions and environment under which we can have a sort of a confidence that Europe could be a great, reliable partner. So, the concrete projects cannot happen in the EU-Japan context per se, because it's about company to company and also country to country thing. So, but still, this means that there's a broader framework between EU and Japan still help the very things to happen. So that's sort of the generating perceptions, generating environment is still very critical, and that's exactly what the EU authorities and the Japanese government are doing.
Perfect, on time, 40 seconds. Thank you. And thank you, panelists, for being so lively, and the chemistry between you. It's wonderful as a chair to have a panel that just talks amongst itself, because then you don't have to do too much work. So thank you for your insights on this really important issue. I'm sure we'll be coming back at some point in the next few years to talk about this again. So big thanks to you, Nanae and Julie and Michito. And thank you for our audience. Thank you online as well. Sorry we couldn't get to all your questions. And thank you, of course, to Japan House as well for letting us use their wonderful facilities here in Kensington. There will be a recording of this event made available on the IISS website within the next few days. So there's a very rich conversation here. So I shall certainly be going through it again for information. And all that remains is to say, please join me in thanking our wonderful panelists.